All right, win editor Tristan Warner here, joined by Manny Ramirez today. Manny has, created a really cool wrestling software platform. I don't want to mislabel it. Manny will let you talk about it. But it's featured in this month's early September Win Magazine issue. It's the Wrestling Program Optimization Model, WPOM for short. You've probably seen some of their posts floating around on social media. Manny, thanks for joining us today. And real quick, just give us the elevator pitch real quick before we dive further into what this is and how you came up with it and who should be paying attention to it. But what is it? What does it stand for? All that kind of stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, appreciate the time, Tristan. Yeah, the wrestling program optimization model, really it's a data analytical tool that assesses not only high school athletes but college transfer portal athletes, gives them a score from 1 to 5, provides a estimated, and want to be very clear when I say this, estimated approximated NIL valuation associated with
Yeah.
that score, and then allows coaches, athletes to not only see where they stand amongst their peers, but also allows for coaches to be able to see the field in its entirety, and they can also make some determinations and decisions. This is really a data analytical platform that is a
Yeah.
tool, not the decision maker, right? Like the coaches and athletes still have a say in the entirety of the process, but what it does allow coaches and athletes is kind of transparency, and it allows for some decision making to be had from the human side of things.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And we'll talk more about it and we can kind of break it down. But want to ask you, tell the wrestling community real quick a little bit about your background in the sport, and then also your background in, not anybody walking down the street would be able to come up with an idea like this and have the expertise or the knowledge of data and analytics and statistics and that kind of thing. So, how did kind of your background in wrestling and your knowledge of this kind of field, how did those things converge to create this?
Yeah, so I wrestled 4 years at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. I won the SoCon championships in 2011, and unfortunately, that was the same year that they discontinued the program. So as we were all preparing for the national tournament in 2011, we got the bad news that they were discontinuing the program, and I was a redshirt junior at the time, so I had another year left. I was on cloud nine, just won a SoCon title, was going to the national tournament, and then we kind of get our hearts broken prior to going. And then I finished out my last year with UT Chattanooga with Coach Esslinger, Coach Hatcher, Coach Mansueto. I think, luckily I was given that opportunity, and a huge gratitude to those individuals, especially Coach Esslinger for even thinking of me, because I thought I was done. I thought I was done
Yeah.
wrestling. So, yeah, finished out at UT Chattanooga. But and really this comes from a place of, I wasn't the top guy coming out of high school. I wasn't even close to that. I wrestled in out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Qualified three times. Was a state placer twice. I was not, those high level guys. I wasn't winning national tournaments. I was the 2-2, 3-2. If I had a really good tournament, maybe 4-2 at the
Yep.
national level. And I was fortunate enough where I was able to walk on at UNCG with Coach Lakitis, and he gave me that opportunity. And I just grinded it out.
Yep.
Started from literally just being the third guy on the depth chart, maybe even the fourth guy, getting beat up every single day, and then fortunately I was able to turn it around towards the end of my career, and figured it out. Things started clicking. So when I start thinking about recruiting, because I'm in the coaching. I was in the coaching field as well. The last 4 years, I was coaching at Pine Forest High School out of Fayetteville, North Carolina, and
Okay. Yep.
and even in the Fayetteville area, North Carolina area at large, you start seeing that there's talent. Like there really is talent in North Carolina, and then you start asking yourself, all right, well, what are these other states doing? These other kids that are in that same stratosphere as the North Carolina kids, that they're getting recruited in North Carolina, maybe falling under the radar a little bit. And that's when I really started asking those types of questions, and really started asking coaches as well. We had a couple kids from our program that went to Roanoke College this year, Really, really good Division III program, one of the best in the
Oh yeah.
country. And you start asking those coaches, like, hey, like, what's the recruiting process? Like, what is it that I'm missing from a coach perspective that a talented kid like we see in North Carolina isn't getting necessarily the visibility, the look, or the recruiting attention that they may deserve. Not that anything in the sport is deserved, but just for lack of a better word, what that they should be getting, and
Yeah.
that's kind of really like the base and the foundational kind of thesis of this entire platform.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Knowing that you're a coach, it really seems like it came from kind of a selfless angle also because you're trying to help your student athletes. Maybe talk a little bit about, like you said, this also applies to you personally though, because if a software like this existed back when you were in high school, you kind of just said you'd be like a primary customer for this. But
Yeah,
also, pre-transfer portal era, if this was, if your college experience was happening today, you'd be one of those guys. Your program got cut. You're looking for a new home. So
right.
how can this software or tool, how can it be useful to high school and college athletes?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really specific to me because I felt both sides of that coin,
Yep.
right? So, with the program being cut and looking for a new home, uh, how would I have done it in this landscape, right? Like you hit the transfer portal. Because I was a national qualifier, maybe that comes with some sort of extra incentives, right? I don't know because I don't understand the space just yet. This is
Yeah.
again just all estimations and what you
Hmm.
hear on different media sources, right? So you hit the portal, right? So what am I against my peers that are making a bunch of money? How do you backwards math that and
Yeah.
determine a estimation of what you are worth, right? So again,
Evaluation, basically. Yeah.
exactly, right? So
Yep.
an approximation. And what the tool does is exactly that. You hit the portal based off of your wins and losses, bonus points, your potential, the runway that you have as a sophomore versus a redshirt senior, what that projection would look like, right? Based off of how well or how what the ceiling is for you to perform at the national tournament, right? So you can do some math there and figure that out, and then associate a dollar amount to that. So that's kind of how the college side works, right? And what it
Yeah.
does is allows the coaches to see, okay, you hear all these crazy numbers of kids getting paid. Is like now I can actually put a baseline to it and say, okay, this individual may be getting this much, and then I can backwards plan as well. It's not a perfect system by any means or by any stretch of the imagination, right? Because all the dollar figures that we know about are just estimation. No one's, from my understanding, no one's gotten a solid like this person is getting paid this much. To
Yeah.
really set
Exactly.
that in stone. So it's kind of again an estimation. So then you start looking at on the coaching side, right? Looking at who should I get based off of the needs of my roster? How much NIL money do I have? Or if I don't have any, like what can I do? What can I not do? And
Yep.
then it allows you to make an informed decision from the coaching perspective, right? From the athlete side, it's like, okay, this is where I'm at. Does it make sense for me to leave? Does it make sense for me not to leave? Should I stay put? Those types of things. And again, it allows everyone to have a kind of a transparent uh, data set to look at and reference when they're making these decisions, from the college side. So then we take it over to the high school side, and it's kind of the same premise, right? You have, the top guys are the top guys. If you're winning Super 32 multiple times, you're winning Fargo multiple times, like you're going to get recruited. There's maybe some dollar amounts there too. And again, based off what you hear in terms of what the top guys are getting coming out of high school, then you can kind of approximate in backwards math there as well, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that works. But really, what this is targeting is it's those not necessarily the top guys. It's all the guys behind there that next tranche, right? Because if you go like Super 32 is kind of our gold standard of tournaments, right? You do well there, your score starts to go up, right? You beat a
Yeah.
really good kid that is ranked nationally, your score goes up. You place obviously that's a threshold in the scoring, but like if you go 3-2, or if you go 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, you're in the blood round of the Super 32. Like you are very good at wrestling, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh
And I
yeah.
think from a a fan
There's a lot of kids that
perspective.
go 0-2 at Super 32 that are
Yeah,
very
you
good.
know, that are really good, right? But
Yeah.
if you're making it 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, like you're, man, like you're freaking good too.
You're legit.
And
Yeah.
like from a fan perspective, you always look at the top guys. You're always looking on the front side of the bracket in the finals, semifinals. But man, I oftentimes like find myself in those like deep Conti rounds, watching
Yeah.
those matches because they're brawling back there.
It's hard.
And
It's all hard at that point. Heart and
it
pride.
100% is. And then if I
Yeah.
and from a high school coach perspective, I start looking at that and I start asking myself, okay, if I'm a coach, because I'm not a college coach, right? I've never been a college coach. If I'm a college coach, and I'm one of the mid-tier D1s, really this is targeting D2, D3, the JUCOs. I'm on the Conti side, really looking deep over there. Like,
Oh
who am
yeah.
I grabbing that is wrestling their tail off on the backside that can help my program?
Yeah.
And I think those are the guys that really get overlooked and don't really have that visibility or that spotlight. And I think this tool does that, right? This tool allows for those individuals to get a little bit of that visibility. And if the coaches are looking and are searching the tool the way that it's designed to do, like you can find some real diamonds in the rough there. You can find some really good talent that's going to help your team win.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like you said, I think it gives you a way to compare apples to apples, kind of,
Right.
to use like a layman's term, because everybody's getting a score. I noticed on the site it says the Bo Bassett's of the world might be a 5.0, but you got all those guys in between the 0 to 5.
Yeah.
So walk me through a little bit, if you could. How does the score work? And like you said, if you go out to Super 32, your score can go up. Is it
Yeah.
just like a mathematical equation, or how does it work?
Yeah, essentially some mathematical equations, right? And understanding that not all tournaments are created equal, right? Like
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are the Super 32 is, like I said, is the gold standard
Hmm.
of wrestling for high school, right? You do well there, like you're probably pretty good. Then you got your Fargos, you got your Ironmans, and you
Right.
got your NHSCAs, right? Like again, not all tournaments are created equal. Not all tournaments hold the same weight. So when you look at it from a mathematical perspective, each of those tournaments are weighted differently, right? North Carolina State tournament is
Yep.
weighted differently from New Jersey State tournament. And then
Got it.
go down the list. So the way the scoring works is, the better you do in that tournament, the weight is associated to that score. The deeper you go into the rounds, the better your score gets. Um,
Yeah.
on the backside, the same thing. There's a formula and mathematical equation on the backside. The further you go into the constellations, your score continues to go up, and then you wrap all that up, and then you start incorporating what we call notable wrestling, NWI, notable wrestling index, like notable
Yep.
wins, right? So
Right.
you you may go 4-2, didn't place, but you be a top ranked guy. Your score is going to go up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't penalize the wrestler for losing if you're the ranked guy. I know I've had some discussion with some of my friends and some other way smarter people than me that agree and disagree with that notion of penalizing the losing wrestler. But that's just not something that we're doing in our formula. It's
Yep.
awarding the winner, not necessarily penalizing the loser or
Right.
the
Right.
person that didn't win the match. So, and then it also incorporates consistency over time. Like if you're going to Super 32 and you do it multiple times and you're doing well, like that continues to compound, right? It continues
Yep.
to compound and gives you an overall score. So, like in a perfect world, again, we're very new at this. In a perfect world, so 4 years from now, we have the freshmen that are going in now for Super 32. When they're seniors, if they've competed 4 times, they've gone to Fargo, they've gone to NHSCAs, and most of the kids that are wrestling in Super 32 are freshmen, are pretty committed, and that's not crazy to say that they'll be wrestling in those tournaments more than once. Um,
Oh yeah.
you'll start seeing that kind of historical track of wrestling and scoring. So now you can kind of follow it from its infancy, so that you as an
Yeah.
athlete can track, and then you as a coach can also track. So that's kind of the formula in a nutshell.
Makes sense. Yeah. So, in your ideal vision of the future of this, is this something where, and you can kind of talk about the details of how the subscription works and all that, but you're a high school wrestler, I don't know what age, maybe ninth grade, say, you create your own profile. And differently than, some of these things that have existed in the past where you can create a profile where you basically just, type your accomplishments and then
Yeah.
whatever. This is mathematical based. And like you said, it tracks, it changes over time, it's dynamic. And then on the other side, the coaches have their own accounts, right, where they can
Yeah.
see you as an athlete. Maybe just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so in a perfect world, like again, like since we're new, everything is still kind of developing. In a perfect world,
Yeah.
what we'd like to see is because the data is so much, right? There's so many tournaments, there's so many events going on throughout the year, not just the premier, not just the national events. Like I mean, there's local,
Yeah.
state, regional events. What we'd like to see is an athlete create his profile, put all their information in from address, phone, GPA, things like that. Subscribe, which is fairly cheap at $5 a month for athletes, 25 a month for
Oh my goodness.
coaches.
Yeah.
That also allows you to create profiles as a coach, and then you start putting your data in, right? Because us as the data scrapers can't scrape every single thing that's out there. We're gonna miss
Yeah.
stuff, and it's just too much, right? It's too time consuming. So in a perfect world, the athlete goes in and then inputs their data, and then a score is calculated. We on the other side are going to verify that, right? Because anyone can just put anything in there, but if we're going to verify it so
Exactly.
that it's actually legit based off of the data that's out there, and now we can kind of hone that data in, and then really really search and verify it, right? So to get an accurate score, and then from the coaching side, it's the same kind of deal, right? You subscribe as a coach, you get your school set up as a university on the website, and this is where I think is going to make the most impact to the sport. Is I almost explain it kind of like a LinkedIn model, right? Like I'm going in as the athlete, I'm going in as the coach, and now I want to bridge that recruiting gap of like linking the two
Like
together and say, hey,
matchmaking.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, like saying, hey, I'm interested in your program. I hit
Yeah.
a button saying interest, and then the coach on the other side gets a direct text message with all the athlete's data, score, GPA, contact information. And at that point you can start like, all right, you as the coach, and this is where I say, the decision still lies in the coach. This is not a decision making tool. It's a decision
Yeah.
enabling and informing tool where the coach now says, okay, I'm looking in the range of 2.8 to 3.5, so you're in there, you're kind of in the geography of the geographic location that I'm looking at. I'm gonna go start
Yeah.
checking you out, right? At least I'm
Yeah.
on the radar now, right? I'm on the radar versus like I'm just lost in a big sea of fishes,
Yeah.
or a big sea of fishes of national events that me as a coach, it's just too much, right? It's way
Yeah.
too much information. It's way too many athletes for me to search, and now it becomes a little bit more manageable. So, like in a perfect world, that's what we're trying to get to. So,
Yeah.
if you're like that mid tier Division 1, if you're D2, D3, and you're looking for those diamonds in the rough, like this is I feel like the way to do that. Right now, I
This
can
is.
manage
Yeah.
and stack and organize this data to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for in terms of the scoring category. I can even filter by state, by radius, by weight, and now I can I can look at the data and say, okay, these are the individuals that I need to help my team. This is the score that I know is going to impact and improve my overall roster. Let's start looking at these guys.
Yeah.
Because that's always been a question for me is like how do coaches recruit? How do you even do that? Obviously, the top 10, top 20 guys you're gonna look at, but then what? Like,
Yeah.
what's the process from for I'll just use UNC Greensboro as an example. Like, what if I'm UNC Greensboro? What's the process? Like, who am I targeting? And I haven't found an answer to that yet. I don't because I'm not on that
Well,
side.
I was gonna say I was a volunteer and a one year paid assistant at Shippensburg University, D2 school here, 10 minutes down the road,
Yeah,
and I can speak to that a little bit. I can say, and and I wouldn't by any means say this is the best way to go about it, but when you got a small staff at a school where you're not a full time employee, this is just a part time thing. Like a lot of our recruiting was just through email, and it was like
yeah,
hey, this kid reached out to us, or we reached out to
Check them
this
out.
kid and he answered.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, we got an answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm making myself sound like I'm a terrible coach, but really it was like it was as old school it seemed like as you could be. There was no
Yeah.
something like this would be much more valuable with not only the matchmaking capability like you spoke to, but also like some data behind it and some a little more dynamic, where you can have some more information. This was basically like, oh, so, some kid emailed us, let's Google him and see if he's any good.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, and now with like how Flow is, it's just so many videos out there, right? Like
yeah,
you can find anything and
any
everything, but the
kid,
problem
yeah,
is how do I find it? Now
yeah,
I'm just inundated with videos and data. Like
yeah, you're digging,
how do I organize it? And I think this tool does that. And
yeah,
I think I was talking to a buddy of mine. He has a club around here, and what we started doing in terms of advertising, just on social media and posting, is like looking at the data and have the historical context to it, right? So like Division One 2026, the average high school score of the national qualifiers leaving high school was 2.8, 2.9, right? 2.88, so we'll round it to
wow,
2.9, right? So that's not Bo Bassett at 5.0.
that's not a
That's
5.0, yeah,
that's
that's
not,
right,
it's not even 4.0 or above, right? So like when you
yep.
start looking at the data from that perspective, it's like, man, like if I'm a
I bet if you
2.8,
find those same numbers for the kids that were on the podium in D2 and D3, you're finding even
correct,
lower numbers. And that's
exactly, and
that's
then
kind of
so we
providing some hope to some high school kids out there like, hey, you can do
absolutely.
this too. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's really like what we started. Like when I started diving into the data, like that's what really what jumped out at me is like, man, because I could tell you right now I wasn't 2.8 leaving leaving high school.
Yeah.
I was probably a 1.9, 2.1 type of guy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yep.
Um, but I was also kind of stubborn enough to say, you know what, I'll just walk on somewhere. you
Bet
know,
on yourself. Yeah, I
yeah,
love
bet
that.
on myself. I'll walk on somewhere. Now that's
Yeah.
a little bit different with roster caps and things like that. So
Yep.
it's not as easy. But you see 2.8, you see All American, and we did. I think we did an average of All Americans as well, with some data. But if I see those numbers and I say, like I'm in there or I'm close, like this
Yeah.
is you said this is gonna give me hope, and I'm gonna go look. And then if you're a coach on the other side is like 2.8, I know that there's only so many roster spots on the D1 side. If I'm a D2, D3 coach, I'm looking. All right, let's look at some 2.8s. I
Yeah.
think what it really does is allows coaches to see the pool, and then allows the athlete to see. I am competitive. I can do. I can go wrestle in the next level, even if I think I'm not able to wrestle in the next level. Like you definitely can, and then it starts creating opportunities across the board, right? And I think that's where this can make the biggest impact.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. I love that. That's so useful. Taking a look at just some of the numbers that you already have on there and kind of like the spreadsheet that's already on the site, it looks like there's already like 14,000 high school wrestlers, I think. So,
Yeah,
am I wrong to say that there's kids that, we could be speaking to right now that already have their data on there? They just have to sign up, but like they're already on there, right?
correct. Yeah, so like even now you can. We're at right about 15,000 athletes
Okay.
all
That's amazing.
together, right? So
Yeah.
we've scored them uh, dating back to, we have historical data dating back to Super 32 from 2003. I think it was like kind of the first ones, right?
Oh my
I
gosh.
was telling my son I can find my name in one of
Might have to
these.
go find my score.
Yeah, I can go find. I told him I can find my results from those. I just don't look
Yeah,
it up
yeah.
because it wasn't good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're dating. We have all that data from back then. So all to say is that
Yeah.
yeah, there's athletes that are already scored. You go in, you search, browse, you find your name, you find your score, you see it, and then if you think it's too low, then if when we're missing something, that's where you claim your profile. You add the data that we're missing because again, we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's going to be errors. There's going to be growing pains, but the self registration and claiming of the profile is really what's going to allow us to scale the data sets and be able to really hone in the formula even further and the scoring even further. You go in, you add your data, you add those notable wins that we may be missing, and you can see your score go up, right?
Yeah.
So it's out there, and if your name isn't in there, then you can create it from scratch, and then you start adding your data, and then it'll start compiling from there.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. That's so useful. Such a useful tool. How do you envision it becoming in the future? You know, like if you're, I guess, if you're a college coach and you're listening to this interview right now, what would you say, or maybe even a recruiting coordinator? Because a lot of the bigger colleges, and maybe even some of the smaller ones too, have people that are specifically there where they spend the majority of their time just working on recruiting. How could this benefit them most, and why would you encourage them to make a profile and start dabbling around with it?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of twofold in terms of what the future looks like for coaches and athletes. What I think the future for us is a kind of a roster intelligence platform, right? Like you as a coach,
Right.
you figure out what your needs are, you figure out what your criteria and your what your criteria is for your recruiting for that year, because every year is different, right? Like an example, you may need 184, 197 because you're graduating some guys. Um,
Yep.
Now you start looking at how do you fill those gaps, and then our program, when you input that data of what you need, you filter it down maybe by state, by weight, by score category. Now it provides you a data list of names that you can then scrub and go through and say, okay, I like this one, I like this one. Dang, I didn't hear about that. Like I didn't. This one missed us. Why
Yep.
haven't we heard of this one? He's a 3.5. We've missed this. Now I can go look and really do some more due diligence on that end. From the athlete perspective, I think it really helps. Again, knowing where you are in terms of your peers, because I think, and I've heard this from some college coaches, where some kids don't have a realistic understanding of what NIL is, what their worth is, and just kind of just the environment that we live in, right? Like, not
Yeah.
everyone is going to make X amount of dollars coming out of high school, you know?
Right.
Like, what does that really look like so you, as the athlete, can make an informed decision and say, oh, I'm going to hold out and wait for someone else because they're going to call me and I'm going to get more money? Like, maybe that call never comes.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then these opportunities start to go elsewhere, and that's where from that side, and then overall, like really big picture, because we're starting to see it on the college side where, and we see it from in bigger sports, right? You see it in football, basketball, where they have almost like general managers of these programs, and you kind of need
Yep.
that now. You have these director of operations, you have these NIL coordinators at these bigger schools and these bigger programs. For wrestling, because it's such a niche sport, not everyone has the ability and the resources to have a director of operations or a kind of a general manager, if you will. We're
Yeah.
starting to see it for sure in some of the bigger programs, but then again, start really targeting, and this is what I think the program is targeting is those mid tier D1s, D2, D3s. If you don't have a general manager, you can be your own general manager with this tool. You don't have to pay an entire salary to someone to be the general manager. You can pay $25 a month and be your own general manager for your program.
Right.
And that's really
You
what
don't
the
have to be a mathematician either.
no, you don't. Because I'll tell you, I'm none of those things either. And for the mathematicians in the wrestling community that are, definitely reach out and let me know if I'm just completely off the wall, and this doesn't make any sense. Like I would love
Fact
to hear
check it and
that.
verify it. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and because I'm always looking for feedback, but that's really what we're looking for in the future, right? Is those programs to have the ability to be a general manager for themselves, have an athlete realistically see where they are amongst their peers and what's in the realm of possible and realistic, and then coaches being able to use data driven intelligence to make these decisions. That's really what we're trying to do.
Right, right. And what would your message be to fellow high school coaches like yourself? Because your average high school coach out there, yeah, they might have the occasional blue chip recruit or whatever, but the majority of kids that they coach in their career are either kids that are not going to pursue wrestling in college, or if they are, they might walk on or they might end up at a smaller school. It definitely seems like something that high school coaches should be, informed about and be informing, passing that knowledge on to their high school athletes. Like, hey, this is just a really good tool that you should be using.
Yeah, and I think for the coaches, it sets the kind of the baseline of you know if you have one of those kids that isn't necessarily convinced that he can wrestle at the next level and doesn't have that confidence, whether it be Division 1, 2, 3, JUCO, whatever it is,
Yeah.
this tool can help them really see and have like a tangible
Hmm.
data set to look at and say, look, like D1 national qualifiers coming out of high school were 2.8, 2.9, right? Like if you go down the list to D2, D3, that number goes down. Like you are in the realm of all of this. Like this is doable for you because
Yep.
the more college or more high school athletes try to wrestle in college, um, the better off the sport is going to be, right? The
100%.
talent
Yeah.
continues to drive or to go up, competition continues to go up, and it's only going to help us. And this isn't only just for boys. Like we have the girls side as well. We're doing the same thing for girl wrestling, for the female side, and it's a not as advanced or mature data set, because the sport is still growing, but
Newer.
we're
Yeah.
growing with it,
Hmm.
right? Like we're trying to grow with it and have that same parity and that same number set and valuation of talent for the girls as well. So this isn't just for the boys. This is definitely a girl wrestling product as well.
Yeah, love it. I was gonna say that's extremely useful for the on the girls side as well, just because so many of the teams are newer. They're like you said, there's not as much data there. Probably a little harder to find in some cases, but yeah, super helpful on all sides. So, um, leave us with a final message, Manny. Anybody, whether it's a coach, high school coach, college coach, a high school kid, a parent, um, what's your advice on how they can get involved with this thing? Maybe I know you have a pretty comprehensive website that looks really good. It's really well designed. It kind of it kind of breaks it down in like I guess layman terms a little bit that the average person like myself who's not a mathematician can understand. But maybe tell us real quick how they can go ahead and get started on this and what the next step is after hearing this interview or reading this article.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. Just check us out at WPOMwrestling.com and really just kind of just navigate the page, right?
Yeah.
Try to search for your profile. Look to see where you are in terms of scoring. One being just the default. There's no data, and then five being, you're the Bo Bassett of the world.
Yeah.
Now Melvin Miller, who's at like a 4.8 ish around there, and
Okay.
see where you are, right? And really just analyze and kind of do that self realization and give that criticism of, okay, am I really here? Should I be above? Should I be below? And then kind of just assess from there, right? Because that's really what it is to see where you are amongst your peers, see where you are and where you want to get to, if that's where you want to get to, and then hopefully as this program advances to the college side and we get coaches involved and we really bridge that gap and give visibility to the kids that need it to give them the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it something you'd say where you need to grow the high school numbers to make it more attractive to the college coaches? Or I would argue that with 14,000 names already in there that you guys compiled, I would say this is something that college coaches should be jumping on right now. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I think college coaches just really just give us a look, right? Like look at the
Yeah.
page and see if it's helpful for you.
Yeah.
And try it out and message us and say, hey, like this is really cool. I wish I had this. If you can do
Yeah.
this, that'd be great, right? Because we're evolving with the sport just like the coaches and the athletes are. So the
Yeah.
better feedback we get, the better the product is going to be. But yeah, like you said, with close to 15,000 athletes already scored, like the data set is there. It's not now you as the coach, you as the recruiter. What is it that you need to fill your roster to get to the next level, right? If I had a team full of 3.0s, like I have a pretty good team. I have a really
You are a
good
good
team.
team. Yeah.
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 So
Those boys were rolling deep at Super 32.
they're
They were on to
super
day
deep.
two.
Yeah, those guys are
Yeah.
wrestling tough.
Yeah. Yep.
And not only that, and this is kind of because I'm in the military, so I had to do this as well in terms of like helping out the academies, right? Like if you're signing up and you're interested in service, like an academy might be for you, and then it could also help the academies and recruit and get that interest as well. Service in terms of closing that recruiting gap as best we can.